Good evening. Welcome to Grand Blanc Township Board Meeting for Tuesday, May 16th. If we could all rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk Robertson, could you call the roll, please?
I would be happy to. Trustee Hugo is not present, absent, okay. Trustee Fike.
Here.
Trustee Raridan.
Here.
Trustee White.
Here.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Here.
Myself, of course, I'm here. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6 members present, a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
I'll make that motion. If you
Okay. Supported by Mr. Fike.
Motion by Robertson, supported by Fike on the agenda. Trustee Raridan.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will open the microphone for public comment. Have we received any requests for public comment?
I have no cards, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. Anybody wish to make public comment that didn't fill out a card? See a couple people in back that are smiling. I don't know. You have any comments? No? Okay. We'll move it back here to the board, and at this time, we would like to recognize one of our new police officers. Chief, are you going? Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call Officer Greg Purichef up here. Greg, if you could come on up. Just to introduce everybody to Officer Greg Purichef, he went through a pretty strenuous process with our hiring process. Multiple interviews and a background investigation, which I may add that Greg actually had gone through the background investigation with 2 other candidates who we ended up washing out. So we believe that Greg was meeting our standards. We're very excited to have Greg on board. A little bit of history about Greg is Greg had done 4 years in the United States Marine Corps serving our country. So that really shone through in his interview, and plus the leadership that he brought to the police department through his military experience. He also had, after completing the military, did 2 years with the Savannah, Georgia Police Department as a police officer. So we're looking very much forward to the things that Greg could bring to us in our community. So I'm expecting some big things from Greg. So, Greg, I want you to call up a person of your choosing. I want you to introduce that person, and then we'll administer the oath of office.
My fiance, Mary Ella.
You're going to go up there, Dave?
No, he's going to.
And Mary Ellen, thank you for letting us have Greg, and welcome to our family as well. So, and if there's anything that you need, you could always depend on anybody here in this room or anybody over at the police department as well. So, Greg, I am going to administer the oath of office to you. So what I want you to do is I want you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of police officer
the duties of the office of police officer
in and for
in and for
the Township of Grand Blanc,
the Township of Grand Blanc,
County of Genesee,
County of Genesee,
and State of Michigan,
and State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Okay. Congrats, Greg. Thanks again, buddy. Welcome. Thanks, Mary.
Greg? Congratulations. Thank you very much, sir. You got a few other people that would like to shake your hand.
Go down the line, Greg.
Okay.
Welcome. Thank you, sir.
Good show.
Thank you, sir.
All righty.
Good to see you again. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Consent. Agenda.
Thank you, Chief. And that's exceptional in this climate to be able to hire as many new officers as we've hired this past year. So we want to keep it going. Yes.
You guys don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting, though. If you don't want. You can if you'd like, but this is pretty boring.
Hey, we were just getting to some more exciting stuff, Jude.
For me.
Okay, Melissa, are we okay with the presentation? We need to turn on the monitors. We've tried it when it's plugged in over there. I'm trying. Here, let's plug it in up here. Should be looking on that one, but it doesn't.
If anything can go wrong, it will. There you go.
Okay. Okay, at this time, we will have a presentation of the Township's investment account performance from Michael Berry from PFM. Good evening, Mr. Berry.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I feel much better without giving an investment presentation without so many guns in here, given the environment. So about 5 years ago, the township asked PFM Asset Management and myself to help with taking a look at your investment program and seeing if there were things that we could do to help you improve that. So we engaged in a number of different things. First looked at your investment policy and made recommendations to update your investment policy, and then made some, did some analysis of your cash flow. And so I was asked tonight to really just give you a brief update on what this all looked like when we put the program together, and then how has it worked in these last few crazy years. So on the first page through here, as I mentioned, we did this cash flow analysis. So you provided us with data on just month-end cash balances, because the number one priority in investing for the township should be safety, making sure that you comply with Michigan Public Act 20 and that you're always investing in safe assets. And the second most important is liquidity, to make sure that you aren't tying your money up when you need to have access to it. So we did this cash flow analysis, and we came up with what your average monthly cash balance was, when your largest cash balance was, and when your lowest cash balance was. Then on the next page, I'll show what we did with that. Is we modeled out here, the dark blue line is an area where you really weren't investing or accessing your cash at all. You didn't have an immediate need for that. We called that core cash, and it would allow you to invest in a little bit longer term securities. And in a normal interest rate environment, the longer you invest, the more interest rate you can earn. We've certainly not been in a normal interest rate environment for the last few years. And then that light blue shaded line is just the daily movements in your cash. You want to make sure that that's very liquid, money that you can get every day, whether it's just sitting in the bank or in some sort of fund that has daily liquidity. And then that yellow line is we said that nothing's perfect, so you should have a liquidity cushion. So we showed this model and said that we thought that about 15% of your portfolio should be accessible every day. And beyond that, there was opportunity to do some investing. On the next page, we just take a look at what your portfolio looked like in April of 2019. So I came in 2018, started doing the work. This is what you were doing at that point. The majority of your funds were in certificates of deposit, about 62%, about 38% in money market funds, and you can see on the right side a maturity distribution. Almost all of your money, your investments matured in 2 to 3 months, so very, very short-term investments. So not taking advantage of those funds you didn't need right away and that upwardly sloping yield curve. On the next page, we took a look at how did that impact your portfolio? So going from the last 10 years, from June 2009 through June 2019, had you invested some of your funds longer term, would you have been able to get additional return? And over that 10-year period, look, you could have added about $1.9 million to the portfolio. So there's some benefit to extending maturities. On that last column of this chart, that's something to pay attention to as well, though. When you're invested very short term, 3 months or less, there were no quarters with negative return. When you're at a 1-year treasury focus, 3 out of 40 quarters might have a negative return. As market rates rise, the value of your existing holdings decline. As market rates decline, the value of existing holdings rise. And over a longer period, 1 to 3 years, there's really 8 quarters out of 40 where there were a negative return. So that, just to understand, there is some risk for investing longer term. And the next page, I just wanted to show you what happened. I know very small charts, but this is called the Fed dot plot, and each one of these dots represents a member of the Federal Reserve Board and where they think interest rates should be. And I just wanted to give you a picture of what's happened over the last couple of years because it's been unprecedented. So in the top left, this is December of 2019. The Federal Reserve believes that, and these are the people who actually set their interest rates, believes that by the end of 2019, the short-term interest rates will be between 1.75 and 2%, and they don't really anticipate any changes in 2020 and slight increases in 2021 and 22. If you fast forward just to June of 21, which is after the pandemic, you can see that in 2021, the Federal Reserve is expecting interest rates to remain at 0 all through 2021 and through 2022. We started investing March of 2020 for you. So right when things fell off the cliff, that's when we were finally able to do some investing for you. And at that point, the Federal Reserve did not really anticipate interest rates rising. The bottom left is September 21, so about 3 months later, still thinking that they're going to keep rates 0 for 2021 and maybe raise them 1/4 point in 2022. And then the bottom right, as we could see in 2023, where they were, the median Federal Reserve member thought that rates might be about 0.75. They now think about 5.25. So we just had this unprecedented interest rate increase. And the anticipation is that the rates will stay about this rate, the short-term rates will stay about this way through the end of this year, and then may start to decline going forward, really trying to impact inflation. The next page just showed, so what, that was their thoughts, what actually happened in the market. So on the top left, that heavy blue line is where rates were in November of 2019, so still ahead of where we were investing in the 3-month was at 156 and the 5-year at 169. If you go to the next chart on the right, that's March of 2020. That's right when we started investing. The 3-month actually had a negative interest rate. So when the Fed lowered interest rates to stimulate the market, that's when we were able to start investing your funds. And so out to 5 years, it was only 0.5%. So we did do some extension out 1, 2, or 3 years to pick up some additional yield. And as you remember, you could see from the page before, the Federal Reserve was at that point not anticipating rates for 3 or 4 more years. They're the ones that set them. The bottom left is where things were at March of 2022. And so the 3-month was up to 0.32 and the 5-year up to 1.68. So we have this normal sloping yield curve. And then where were they at end of September 22? The Fed really started ratcheting up rates in 2022. Even though they said they weren't going to at all, they started ratcheting up rates in 2022. And where are we today? So this is April 28th. So it's hard to put any statistics in here with a date anymore because there's been so much volatility. But we can see the 3-month is now at 5%. And we have an inverted yield curve, which means the market's anticipating some sort of recession in the near future. So even though you invest out longer term, you will get a lower rate than if you kept your money short. The analysis has to be, can you lock in some of those rates before they drop? And if you were to try to invest in the future, get further along. So just wanted to show there's been a lot of, it was very interesting to be hired in March of 2020 to actually start investing your money because the market has just gone really crazy. I'm going to skip 2 pages and just show you where are you today. So this is your, one more page. So this is what your portfolio looked like, I'm going to say today, at the end of March 31. So we run these reports on a quarterly basis. At this point in time, you had almost $35 million that we were investing. About $11 million of it, or about 32% of the portfolio, is in very liquid overnight funds. So you still have the ability to get that money whenever you need it. On the plus side, interest rates in that area right now are around 5%. So you went from a market where short-term interest rates were negative to now earning 5%. The managed account, where we have some longer-term securities, just under $24 million, about 68% of the portfolio. And you could see by this maturity distribution where when we started, your portfolio all matured within 3 months. It's really kind of spread out between overnight money and over the next 1, 2, or 3 years. And we're kind of in that 1 to 2 year range. So the impact that has on your portfolio, and this is the performance that's on the next page, we compare it to a benchmark. And since inception, for that 3-year period, from March of 2020 to March of 2023, the market value and the income earned comes in at a negative number, which is that blue line under the 0 line. But the gray line is the benchmark compared to the rest of the market. Very similar, well, the same numbers for 3 years. But you can see the 1 year and the 3-month above and still ahead of the benchmarks. It's important when I mentioned earlier, and we could give you a whole economics class on if you have your current portfolio and the market interest rates go up, the value of that portfolio goes down because investors could buy new securities at the higher rates. But as long as you're going to hold those to maturity, it doesn't matter what the current market value is, or you're going to get your par back when it matures. So we really look over on the right-hand side where we say interest earned since inception. We've earned almost $900,000 on the portfolio in the time that we've been investing it. In the last month, last 3 months, $131,257. So the portfolio is, again, in about a third of it now, earning about 5%. And we do have some of the securities that we bought in that low interest rate environment that we're still holding to maturity. And if I go 2 more pages to page 13, where we just have recent transactions, just kind of showing you what's happening. So there were some maturities in February of $2 million that was earning 1.38%, and $3.5 million that was earning 1.5%. In March of this year, we were able to invest $3 million at 4% and $725,000 at 5%. So we're now taking advantage of those higher rates. So really just wanted to show you, and I guess this last page is, this is our investment pool. This is where your liquid funds are invested in the government portfolio. On May 9th was paying 5.04%, and that's where a third of your funds are. So just wanted to share with you that there was a very thoughtful process that was put in place, as opposed to just buying CDs and rolling them when they became due. The analysis was done, the investment policy was updated, the cash flow study was done, and we are taking advantage of the current good rates that we've had, but it was really a timing thing where when we started, rates went to zero, and it was a really difficult period. So I hope I didn't bore you too much, but gave you a background of what we've been doing, and certainly be willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Fike?
I've got a few questions.
Okay.
Does the stock market impact us at all?
So you can't invest in the stock market on the Michigan Public Act 20. So the stock market would impact investors' thought processes on what should be happening. I don't think it impacts the Federal Reserve on where they're raising or putting rates. They're really focused on cutting down inflation. You know, inflation was up to 9%. It's down about 4.5% now. So that's really why they raised the rates. But if the stock market goes up or stock market goes down, it shouldn't have an impact on your fixed income investments.
Last year, how much how much did we go up or how much did we go down on our investment?
So you went up in income. If I got the number here. For the 1 year, you earned about $381,000 in income. The value of those securities in the last year dropped by $40,000. So you ended up net ahead $341,000, but you aren't actually going to lose that $40,000 in value, because that would only be if we had to sell it on that date. And our intent is to hold those to maturity, so you'll get your entire investment back. You're just required, what they call it mark to market. You're required to show what is the market value if you had to liquidate everything today. That's why it's really important to have done that liquidity cash flow study that we did in the beginning. So that's where you're seeing some of the bank failures that occurred, where they also invested longer term, and their other depositors came in on one day and said, give me all the money today. You don't have anyone that's going to say, give me all the money today, because we've got that, we're monitoring that cash flow, and right now about 30% of your portfolio could be withdrawn in one day. So about 10 million, a little over 10 million, $11 million could be withdrawn tomorrow and have no negative impact on the portfolio. So that was very important. It's something that your committee did that the people at the banks that are having issues didn't do, is pay attention to their liquidity needs.
Now, you say 381 in income last year, and then minus the 40, but then you don't unless you
Right.
know it. Is it? Can you give us that in the form of a percentage?
So yeah, so the portfolio returned last year 1.49%. It's on this page right here. It's got that information there. So the portfolio returned 1.49%, about 1.5%. Rates were rising. You had some money in the longer term, lower rate investments, but as they've matured and as new cash came in, we're able to invest in the new higher rates.
And that, as the industry goes, you do this in other jurisdictions. Is that high or low, or is that about normal, the 1.489%?
So that's about, we're managing your funds the way we're managing other entities' funds, so that's about normal. There is a benchmark to compare it to. So the benchmark was around the same rate, about 1.55 for the year. We do have a fee in there, and the benchmark doesn't have a fee in there. We charge 1/10 of 1% to invest the proceeds. So we're very happy with the performance of the portfolio.
Okay,
we-
your fee is 1/10 of 1%?
Correct.
What does that figure out in a yearly basis?
So 1% of, if you win at 35 million, would be 350,000, so $35,000, 1/10 of 1%.
I think for the peace of mind, it's well worth that. The list of other parties that you invest for is very impressive, and I didn't realize how many other local entities,
Yeah.
municipalities, and public entities you invest for here locally. But
Right. We invest for about 500, either school districts or local governments, municipalities. In Michigan, PFM Asset Management is a national firm with about $250 billion in assets under management. In every state that we work in, PFM at one point stood for Public Financial Management. So about 95% of our clients are public entities. Every state has its own laws about what you can invest in and what you can't invest in. The state of Michigan is looking to change Public Act 20 to allow you to have a little more leeway in what you can invest in. Not huge. Right now, you can only, if you were deposit money in a bank, they have to have an actual brick and mortar facility in the state of Michigan. That's one of the proposed changes, that you could deposit money in a bank outside of the state of Michigan. You can only buy municipal bonds of the state of Michigan. They're considering whether you could buy municipal bonds of other states. And you can't buy corporate bonds. You can buy commercial paper, which has a maturity of 270 days or less, but you can't buy a bond in a corporation. That's another consideration that they're making, but the proposal is to put a cap on that of maturing within 5 years. So those are some considerations the state is making in what they'll allow governments to do, but they are also very focused on safety, number one. So you can't put your money in speculative investments.
Mr. Robertson?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Generally speaking, from a big picture standpoint, from an investment standpoint, what is your biggest concern going forward in the short and intermediate term for us?
I would say on the short term, the debt ceiling issue could be significant. And I would say in any other environment, in any other time that we face this, I would say it's all bluster and don't worry about it. And in this current environment, I think that there are parties within our government that won't have a problem with defaulting. The U.S. Treasury is the number one safest security in the world. And if you default on the U.S. Treasury, that could cause some problems. So there is some heartache over that. The hope is that whatever posturing anyone does, in the 11th hour, they come to a conclusion with that. The other things we're looking at is, what is the Federal Reserve going to do with interest rates? Our belief is that they've slowed down their increases, that they could possibly raise rates 1.25% this year and then stay where they are and come down. So what you have to do then is balance. Right now I can get 5% for overnight money and 3.5% for 3-year money. Do I want that 3.5% or do I want the 5? Well, if I keep the 5, and then in 6 months, that 3.5 went to 2. Boy, I sure wish I had invested in that 3.5, and the cash goes to 1/2. So those are the things that we think about. What is the Fed going to do? What is the economy look like, and where do interest rates head? So overriding all that again, though, is that liquidity study, so that we don't ever have to sell something that we weren't anticipating selling.
Very good. One question through you, Mr. Supervisor, to Mr. Limita. When are we having a presentation from the MERS folks? Aren't we going to have somebody come in?
Yeah, and I think what we want to do is wait until June, when we get our actuarial valuation study from them on how our defined benefit plan has performed over the last year.
Thank you. Forgive me if I didn't remember that, but thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
And I would just respond to that, in that what MERS is doing, your pension plans and your healthcare trusts are invested under a completely different law than your operating fund. So Public Act 314 allows for investments in stocks and bonds. So that they're kind of doing something different than what we're doing because this is your operating money versus your long-term pension money.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Kilmer?
Does that, Michael, does that affect us as far as what? As far as the MERS thing, or,
I'm not understanding the question.
I'm not understanding asking it right either.
I think you have a separate pot of money that you're considering having MERS manage. That doesn't impact this pot of money or what you're doing here. I say two completely different laws around what you can do with it, and it shouldn't have any impact on this.
Mr. Berry, one of the things I think that we spoke about, we met, I don't know, a month or two ago, I think, Mr. Limita and several of us, but I think one of the things we were looking at was there was a money market. It seems like there was something we were considering, wasn't there, that something we're maybe not taking advantage of right now?
So there is, and on this second to last page here, before all our disclosures, we have a term structure that you can also lock in rates. So you see that current 7-day yield for the GovMIC portfolio, that's the liquid portfolio you're in. There's also these rates where you can lock in for a certain period of time. You really need to put $1 million in any one of these to lock in these rates for this period of time. So, but you can get, if you're investing out to September, 5.4%. So it's the same concept, the time concept of a CD, but it's really investing in the same types of securities. So if you had other types of funds within the township, you could take advantage of these as well.
Would we use any of our liquid funds for doing?
We could do that.
Mr. Limita?
So what we want to make sure is, before we have Michael and give him a dollar amount on what we should invest in there so we can take advantage of some of the interest rates now, is from a capital perspective, because, you look at the funds we have and you're like, wow, we're carrying, on the average of $24 million. Shouldn't we have more of that? Why are we keeping so much liquid? A big part of that is, if we really start to break it down, like from the enterprise funds, if it's $14 million and you'll have that conversation when you have the auditors in to kind of talk about where we're at, what we're sitting on. But you go, man, the enterprise funds are $14 or $15 million. When you look at what we need to keep in reserve, $7 million of that is we're required to keep to have our operating reserve balance. So really, it's $7 million. So can we invest more of that longer term? Some of that money is invested longer term, but we have to make sure, from our standpoint, is getting the ARPA funds in, and we'd set up an account for ARPA funds with the idea that you're going to give us $3.8 million. Can I set $3 million of that, or $2 million of that, 1.5 million of that? Exactly that, so we can take advantage of some longer-term interest rates. Now that we've finally kind of put the ARPA funds together, we know exactly when that's coming up. 1.5 million will be spent with the fire station number 2 remodel. That should be completed by August or September of this year. The 1.5 million that I recommend that we put in for fire station number 1 actually can invest those funds a little bit longer, because we won't anticipate needing those funds until potentially 2024, the end of 2024. So we do need to come back together, take a look at our capital, what we're going to spend over the next 12 months. If we've got longer term money and we can take that liquidity down a little bit, it would make sense, and Michael can then make that investment.
Or even some of these shorter term. So for example, 60 days, if we could invest, you say it has to be a minimum of $1 million?
Yeah.
You get 5.1%, or if we could go out 120 days, you get 5.4.
Right.
So, we might just, not that we want to get into having the 30-day CDs type
Right.
thing, but if we had, we knew we weren't going to spend some money until September, October, looks like 5.25 or 5.4 might.
What we don't want to do is have to cash it in before maturity,
Right.
Because then that unrealized loss that we're talking about becomes realized.
Right. Okay.
And
Mr. Reardon?
actually, that gets to a question about, okay, so the unrealized, how long do we have to hold that? particular?
You hold the security, depending on the security till it matures. So we have some maturing in 23, 24, 25. So we just have to hold those till they mature.
And what's the interest rate that we're receiving for those that are 23, 24, 25? Ballpark.
Yeah, so they're going to be between the stated interest rate in between 0.5% to like 1.5% right now.
So, like, wouldn't it make sense maybe to pay that penalty if we can get 5%?
So the market, so that's what happens with that unrealized loss. Say, here's a $1 million bond for that pays 5%. Here's a $1 million bond that pays 1%. How do you get the person to buy the 1% bond? You lower the price so much of the 1% bond that it's the same economic value as the 5% bond, and that's your unrealized loss. And so that's what happens to the market value is people say, why would I buy that from you? It's not really a penalty for early withdrawal. You have to find someone to buy it from you. Why would I buy a 1% bond? Because I only had to pay 80 cents on the dollar to get it, and the economics are equal. If I hold it to maturity, I'm going to get all my money back, so why take that off?
Okay, because I was looking at CDs and you pay a small penalty and you can,
Yeah, no, these are treasuries, U.S. treasuries, agencies of the government. You have to find a buyer, and then they're going to change the
buy 'em,
price.
Jude? We can sell them.
yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Barry? I think we're in good hands, and we appreciate the presentation.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate the opportunity to be service to you.
One quick comment, though. I wish we would have done this back in 2012-ish.
Years ago,
Yeah, when we were,
Much further in.
invested with PFM, you're saying?
so.
Yeah.
I wish you had to.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Very good. Number 7.
Okay, we will move to approval of the consent agenda. If somebody cares to make that motion, Mr. Reardon. Dr. Reardon makes the motion,
Raritan makes the motion,
supported by Mr. Fike.
supported by Fike. Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Okay, number 8, old business. Our strategic plan item is improving parks and recreation facilities. Mr. Lemata?
The Parks Operations Manager and Assistant Superintendent Matt Kimmer is going to provide you this update because even though it's still relatively new to him, being immersed into the parks operations, he's the man. He's in charge.
Do it.
We didn't have good luck with the other one.
Should we try this
Try with that
again?
one again, and we'll see. Let me try
Try to switch it
flipping the
over. If
switch.
not, we'll use yours.
Is that plugged in at the floor level? Do we know? Is that? Okay. Let's give it a shot. Should be. There we go.
Got it.
All right.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to give you a brief update here about what's been going on out at the parks, and we just lost the screen. Come on. Wow, that was quick.
I didn't do anything.
Okay. Can we go back to, do you still have yours up?
No, but I can get.
Just not as impactful without the photos.
We want the full impact
Right?
performance. We want that.
Alyssa, I need you for a second here. Well,
It's basically the same photos.
oh, just your password.
Sorry, guys.
For whatever reason.
You can stand it
As soon
easy.
as you unplugged or shut that one down,
I don't know.
Is that what happened?
yeah, the minute he did it,
Oh, really?
yeah.
That's odd.
To run power through his, maybe?
You know what? Let's try it. Hold it in a second, Matt. Try it again. think I know what happened. Give it a second. There we go. Okay.
Something.
It came unplugged. The power is kind of finicky on this thing.
Okay.
Sorry
Okay,
about that, Matt.
ready?
We are.
Good evening. Let's do this.
We'll start over.
Okay. So, a few of the items that we've completed out there this spring or are currently under construction as part of our capital improvement plan funded by millage dollars. So we've had new concrete pads installed for ADA bleachers. The bleachers they will be assembled later on this week with some of our park staff and DPW guys. We've also installed ADA accessible pathways. This would be the South Quad, fields 2 through 5. In this view, you can also see some of the new fencing that we've installed along the backstops and along the baselines. Here's another view of some of the pads we've installed with the new fencing. Again, bleachers should be up by the end of this week or early next week. This is part of the ADA accessible pathway that we've installed from the parking lot leading over to the upper quad, fields 7 through 10. Here's another view of that. So we now have ADA accessibility to those back fields there. Concrete pads have also been installed out at these fields for ADA accessible bleachers as well. Here's a quick little view of some ADA accessible parking that we've had installed between fields 7 and 10 and a little near the maintenance barn there as well. This is a view of the batting cages. So the batting cages, we had concrete poured. We're going to, for now, put crushed asphalt in the middle there. And some new netting will be installed in the next coming a couple weeks or so. So we can get those batting cages up and running again. On the concrete surface there, we'll look to install some sort of turf. That's basically where, home plate will go in the batting cages. This is just a view of some of the fencing that we've installed. This is on to the Little League restrooms and concessions facility. So the restrooms, they've had new floors installed, new paint, some new fixtures in there. The partitions have been ordered. They arrived a couple days ago, and I believe the partitions are being installed today and tomorrow. So those will be up and running here soon. The restrooms should be up within the next week or so. We'll have everything ready to go. Here's just another view of one of the restrooms. This is the new concession area that we have. So half of the remaining Little League facility we will keep as storage. The other half will be our new concession facility. So this window here was installed this spring. Here's an interior view of the concession area. We're getting close to completing this as well, probably within the next week or so. We're just waiting on the electrical contractor to finish up some things. Here's just the other view of that, of the concession area. So this will be great to have this facility here for our concessions. We're currently running it out of a trailer that's seen better days. So this is much needed. As far as the Perry House goes, the Perry House was recently painted. This was completed last week, a fresh coat of paint on the entire house. And the barn out at the Perry House has been demolished. There's still a few pieces left out there that the contractor still has to clean up, but the beams for the barn, the idea, the lady that took them, she has a plan to repurpose them here in the township as possibly a wedding venue. So we're able to preserve some of the historical aspect of the Perry property there. Here's just another view of the painting of the Perry House. So as far as any future capital improvement projects that we may have coming up here in the next few years, we'll be looking at making some improvements to the road and the parking facilities out there. The splash pad is on the list as well, possibly looking at some grant funding to offset some of the costs on that. We'll also possibly be looking at rehabilitating or maybe rebuilding the South Pavilion, as well as the playground equipment that is there next to the South Pavilion. Two little items that I should mention. This Saturday is the Perry Pioneer Day put on by the Historic District Commission out at the Perry House from 11 to 3. This is the 11th year that they've done this. Small petting zoo, old-fashioned outdoor games, just a nice little afternoon out there for the Historic District Commission. We also had our golf outing last Friday for Parks and Recreation. I want to give a special thanks to all of our sponsors, everyone in the community, everybody here that played in the outing. We had a great time. We raised over $8,400 to go towards programming, park improvements, and community events for Parks and Recreation. So that's all I have tonight. Any questions from anyone?
Mr. Lehman, and then we'll go to Mr. Fite.
Just want to mention that Supervisor Bennett and I met with Congressman Kildee 2 months ago, probably. Scott, does that sound about right?
Right.
And had the opportunity to talk to him about where we're at and trying to get the investment in our parks and some things. And they did reach out to us and make us aware of an opportunity, of funding opportunities. So Melissa Roberts, Matt, myself, Jeff Sears, Senya, we all bounced this around and worked on it to put together a application to that program. And we've requested the splash pad, some parking lot areas, improvements. So we expect to hear back, and I think it's September. Does that sound September, Melissa, Matt?
Sounds correct, yes.
But it went very well, and some follow-up questions. They talked about combining it with something that Muddy Township was doing and someone else too. But to look, they're going to put it in as a whole request for an appropriation for Genesee County Parks. The money would be awarded to Genesee County Parks, and it will be a pass-through back to Grambling Township if we're successful in our request. So we're hoping that went very, very well. It sure seemed positive. Wrote up a great narrative. It was a real joint effort from staff here, and hope we got great information to announce in September, where we would be potentially building that splash pad sooner than you think.
Be awesome. And then Mr. Fite, and then we'll go to Mr. Gill.
I just have a couple quick questions. You know that thing we approved that was going to be a workout thing?
Yes, the fit court.
What's the status of that?
What's the status of that?
Yeah.
We are currently going out for bids for the concrete base underneath that. So the equipment has been delivered. It's currently in our barn. We're looking to get some pricing on the concrete to be poured for the base that needs to sit on. Once that's done, the fit court will come out and install the equipment for us.
The other thing quickly was the concessions.
Yes.
Our people run that, and is there a profit there, or does that just break even?
No, there's a profit there. Yes, it is our people that currently run the concessions, parks workers. They're typically out there running the concessions. I don't have a number exactly on profit, but yes, it is profitable, especially on the weekends with the softball tournaments and various events that are going on. So yes, it is.
Thank you.
We have a few food trucks too once in a while, right, or no?
I think the food trucks historically were kind of brought in by some of the tournaments. So,
Maybe
yeah,
more people to our concession stand.
that would be the idea, yes.
I have to say that it's been long overdue that we've got some return on our tax dollars for the parks.
Right.
For years, we've paid into the parks and gotten absolutely nothing.
Right.
And I support, the effort to finally see a return on this.
It'll be federal money, but, hey, wherever we get it from for our parks, you know, and if it has to go through the county, that's fine too.
Still comes from the same taxpayer's pocket.
Right. One thing I know that would be helpful, I think, and I know we probably have some plans for signage, I think, on the pathways, right?
Yes, yes, we do.
Installed.
Yep. And I know we need some signage for the North Pavilion as
Right.
well. And yeah, we do have some things
I know I
to
texted you on
clear up on the
Saturday or
signage, yes.
Sunday saying, hey, we need, because, you know, when you have events out there, people all show up at the wrong pavilion, it seems like, and there's people that don't even know we have a North Pavilion.
Sure.
They get to the South Pavilion, and that they think that's the end of our park. They don't even realize that, hey, go around that curve
Yep.
and head back, and there's a whole another section to our park back there.
Yep.
I think a lot of people don't even know that exists.
Yeah,
There's
definitely
even a second entrance or exit, you know,
Yeah.
back there on the north side.
improving the signage is on the
I
list
think,
of
you
things
know,
to do.
Something in South Pavilion and have an arrow or whatever be helpful, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to the splash pad and whatever we can continue to build on there. But it all looks great, the work that's been done.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. White?
I'm going over this, kind of the strategic plan. Has there been any discussion on identifying areas for new parks? The last thing I see on here was May of '21, and then I don't see anything since then. Has this been discussed at all?
I haven't had any conversations about the areas. I know the previous director that was here had some.
What was the question, Mr. White? I'm sorry.
New parks.
New parks. Well, part of the situation I think that we encountered is with the cell phone tower. You know, we received negative points every time we went out for a grant. We were able to get the I think DNR to change their opinion on how that works. We were looking for property to offset the property that, you know, the cell tower sits on in the fall line, so that we wouldn't get dinged every time we filled out a grant.
Sure.
So when they removed that, the need for that anyways diminished. I know, you know, one of the things we're looking at here with our campus for the township is to try and make it more of a park-like setting in this area, so that you know, if you look at a map, and I think we have a map around here somewhere that shows, you know, what areas are the furthest from our park. This is one of them over here. So we'd be answering that call if we are able to take, you know, the property here and have pathways, you know, and maybe some recreational opportunities here on our campus that would help resolve that. But I think that was kind of the emphasis at the time. Mr. Lemata?
So if you look at our most recently updated 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan, one of the goals that we stated in there was that we're going to do exactly what Trustee White has suggested, is those neighborhood pocket parks. And Supervisor Bennett is correct. Some of the ones we looked at, I'm trying to remember the name of that street, but we have a pump station easement or there's some sort of a DPW easement on one we looked at, and the state told us that we would just be encumbering additional park territory, so we backed away because that was a whole issue with the cell tower. But our goal is to continue to identify those smaller parcels. You know, one good way to do it is when land bank properties come up to us every year to take a look to see if they'll work for us to be able to, you know, does that work for a neighborhood park? But I'm trying to remember what the national park's goal is, like a 5 or 10, you know, that there's a park within a 5 or 10 minute walk or bicycle ride from every area of your municipality, so that you can offer people some outdoor recreation. And it could be just as simple, like I said, those pocket parks with picnic tables or, you know, swing set or some sort of, you know, activity, even if it's just green space, so they have the ability to have some place to run and to recreate.
I know I went out with Patrick several times in the past looking at parcels, and, you know, what you said, Dennis, that, you know, the DNR or what have you, it had to fit so many different categories as far as, you know, frontage on a road and, you know, what have you. We had to buy it. It couldn't be given to us, or couldn't already be in public, you know, domain. So there were several limiting factors, but we have looked at, you know, some parcels that are orphaned in, subdivision areas, whatever, along Expressway, what have you, and for whatever reason, they just wouldn't work with the state, so. But it's something that we definitely will need to continue. Clerk Robertson?
Yeah, I think you answered my question because I remember doing a drive around with Patrick, and he had identified a couple of small parcels, like nestled in neighborhoods, road ends, the end of streets. And if I understand your comments correctly, those are not developable under the rules or under guidelines or what have you?
From the state?
There are some pieces of property in the township that meet that where they are undevelopable property because they don't fit zoning standards. But even then, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of if the parcel's available and it's in a neighborhood and it makes sense for us, people have access to it. One of the things that the DNR will ask, of course, if you're trying to develop something, is there a way to get there? Is there, how are people going to get there? It's, in fact, just what came up with our application for the Embry Cook pathway is when the first comments after the initial review, they came back and said, how are the people from the neighborhoods going to have a safe crossing if you're only going to run a pathway down the west side of Embry? How are the people who have neighborhoods on the east side going to cross safely? So we have to address that issue in our plan. And it may mean that we do something by Grand Blanc Crossing and another one up by that other subdivision, which is closer to Grand Blanc Road. But we pave a short path to there, and then we have a lighted sign at Grand Blanc Crossing that would, flashing lighted pedestrian crossing sign.
Right.
So some of as we do these things, I think it's important to acquire the property, but then make sure that we're also putting together the plan for how people are going to access those pocket parks.
Good question, Mr. White. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? Okay, are we looking good for tournaments for this summer as well, for softball? I know
We're ready to go.
ready to go.
We're fully staffed. We're ready to go.
Fabulous. Good deal.
9A.
Okay, so moving on to new business, the board will consider Resolution 23-13 authorizing a fireworks display at the Captain's Club at Woodfield on May 27th, 2023. Mr. Limata?
So we get these from time to time, from a private citizens who want to do commercial grade fireworks, and the local municipality has to approve it. Usually when we get them, the first thing we do is send it to Fire Marshal Chris Keller. He takes it and reviews the plans to make sure that it makes sense. Some of the ones we've rejected in the past were in neighborhoods where there wasn't a safe fall zone. There were some concerns about where they would come down. So we've seen some come through that we've rejected over the last, during my tenure. This one went through. It is for a private wedding. It is at the Captain's Club. The fire marshal had them move the launch zone to make sure that he felt safe with where it was going to be. And his recommendation is that we go ahead and move forward. They did reach out to me last week asking about it. It's before you now, and again, I believe Fire Marshal believes it's safe. The other good news is it's happening on Memorial Weekend. So if you look at the concern was resident complaints about fireworks going off outside of that window the 2 days before and 2 days after a holiday. This is actually happening on that Memorial Weekend. So I don't think anyone would be totally surprised when fireworks go off at the Woodfield Golf Course.
I know, I recall turning some down in the past, and I think it was because it was outside of being that this is within a holiday time period, makes it a little bit more acceptable, I think, to residents. I know every time we have fireworks, it ignites a lot of complaints, no pun intended, but, all right, I'll get to you in just a second, Mark.
That's right.
But I think we turned it down just because otherwise, we might have fireworks every weekend if, somebody wants to apply for it. But I think being that it's within the holiday weekend where we have fireworks, I didn't realize that when I looked at it. That's good. Mr. Kilmer?
My understanding is it's on the driving range at Woodfield there,
Okay.
where they've got it, that's what they've got detailed there.
Okay.
There's the driving range in front of the building there, and there's quite a wide area there. I would think,
Yeah.
would feel good about.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns about, the safety or fire or whatever. I know, make sure that's covered. It was more, the noise and what have you, that people's dogs. I'll just look on social media after a holiday and you'll see all the reasons why people don't want fireworks, right?
There will be some complaints, make no mistake, there'll be some complaints about fireworks
Right.
going off. And again, because it's not the kind that you can go and buy, this is actually a
Yep.
commercial fireworks display.
I'm good with it.
But again, like I said, we've turned them down in the past. This one was probably the best. Of anyone that's come before us, this one probably had the best laid out plan, being on the driving range, at the golf course, on a holiday weekend.
Right. I'm good with it. Anybody? Yes, Mr. Pike?
Do they have a neighborhood association over there that maybe we could let them know at this time, on this day, that the fireworks are going off? That
In Woodfield?
neighbors know that, all right, we got the little thing in the mail from the, or the posting? I don't know if we do that.
It's,
Well, there's gonna be fireworks anyway.
it's enveloped-
because of the holiday.
through you, Mr. Supervisor, if it's enveloped within the 4th of July weekend, then it would go unnoticed compared to what else goes on, right?
Yeah, but this is May.
Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day weekend, excuse me, I'm sorry.
We can make an attempt to reach out to somebody over there in the neighborhood.
It would be, the thing that we would do then is to if that's what the board wants to do, is to, if you're going to approve the resolution with a caveat that, to make sure notification goes out, I suppose that would be acceptable. And then when we send the approval back to the fireworks company, is that the wedding venue people who are doing this are required to get something out through the HOA or the.
Yeah, just notify the HOA and, they can get the word out to their members. I'm sure they have emails, what have you. I think it's a very active HOA over there.
So all they'd have to do is notify the HOA then.
Right.
Or put up a sign at the
Yeah.
entrance.
Right, and they can let them know.
I'll make a motion that way. approve
Okay.
this.
All right, your support?
Okay, I'll support that resolution.
Okay.
Motion by Raritan, supported by Robertson. Item 9A, Resolution 2313. Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes,
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Okay, item B, the board will consider a motion to change the township board meeting time from 7 PM to 6 PM.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Support? Any discussion?
Support.
I don't support it.
Okay, you'd rather meet at 7?
Yeah, because it gives you a little leeway between work and whatever you've got.
All right.
Okay. Vote accordingly.
Right. I know we discussed it the last meeting, and I didn't think we had any objection, but,
I don't object per se, I just,
okay.
I would rather.
All right, go ahead. Robert.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
No,
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
5-1, motion passes.
Okay, item C, the board will consider a motion to approve the purchase of NeoGov recruiting software in the amount of $17,858 and authorize the township superintendent to execute all related contracts and agreement. Good evening, Ms. Nizwicki.
Good evening. So tonight I bring before you the NeoGov recruiting software. This software has 3 components to it. It has governmentjobs.com, Insight, and Onboard. These 3 components will help us in our onboarding, recruiting, and retaining employees. But the largest component is to help streamline and create efficiencies. Also in the onboarding process, the forms are reviewed by NeoGov, and so they help us maintain compliance.
So the compliance to me is probably the biggest part, just because if you get nicked on compliance, it can be a huge cost. And from what I understand, the software keeps us up to date on any form that we have that employees are filling out, whether it's a new form that the feds just required or a change to a federal document, what have you?
Yep, so part of the onboarding process, they have to do an I-9, it's part of the immigration. So this would integrate with E-Verify. So this would help us maintain our compliance with the immigration also. It's overall, and as each year, the W-4s are always updated by the states and the federal, and this would also update through there. It reviews our applications to make sure that any questions are in there are lawful.
Then helps us maintain records as well on,
Yep. It it's archived forever, so.
One of the things is when you guys look at the price tag of $17,858, the commitment for 2023 is $8,800 or approximately $8,800. That is in the 2023 budget for this program. And then we would put the remainder, the $9,000 remaining into the 2024 budget. It's a 2-year commitment if you were to approve this evening.
so basically 2-year subscription to the software is what we're approving.
Yes.
Okay. Any concerns, thoughts? So the Gov Jobs, I was looking at that, and basically our website would integrate with it so that basically all the job listings that we have or postings would integrate with our website as well as this website for people seeking government jobs.
Yes, so it'll advertise if you go to our website and say, I want employment opportunities, it will actually be on governmentjobs.com, but you won't recognize that there's a difference. And also, if somebody goes to governmentjobs.com and searches anything in Grand Blanc area, we would populate in there. On the governmentjobs.com, it will speed up the process for applicants to apply. So if they apply to multiple municipalities, they have their resume already uploaded and it will autofill in for our application. It also gives us the capability to text message with applicants, which we are coming up with a lot of issues now. People don't want to talk on the phone. They don't want to answer emails, but they will text message with us. So that would be a really good recruitment tool for us.
It keeps record of all that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Is a motion in order, Mr. Supervisor?
It is, unless anybody else has any questions. Okay.
I will make that motion
Okay.
on item 9C,
Support by Dr. Reardon.
supported by Raridan. Okay. Trustee Raridan?
Yes.
Trustee White?
Yes.
Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Item D, the board will consider a motion to approve the purchase of a 2003 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD pickup truck from Berger Chevrolet of Grand Rapids and miscellaneous upfitting equipment for a total of $42,944 and authorize the township superintendent to execute all related purchase orders. Good evening, Mr. Shears.
Good evening, everyone. So as you remember back earlier on in the year, our CIP included the purchase of a CCTV sewer TV truck and a large salt truck.
Right.
We can't purchase the salt truck this year because the chassis is not available until next year. So we ordered it, but we removed that from our CIP and we filled in that purchase with the mechanic's truck, which has already been approved and ordered. And then we're also going to purchase a pickup truck for one of our technicians. The truck that we're replacing is approximately 14 years old. We're on a 10-year replacement program for all of our pickup trucks. This is one of the older ones in our fleet. So we'll be playing a lot of catch-up with this purchase. Also, it'll help us provide a pickup truck to Parks and Recreation, who are in need for one right now for plowing and such. So we'll be able to transfer an asset over to them to replace one of their beat-up trucks, I guess. You know, an even older one that we donated to them a while ago, or not donated, transferred to them. The purchase price from Berger Chevrolet is $34,793. That's through the Oakland County Cooperative Bidding Program, who we use with every pickup truck that we purchase. It's better than the My Deal pricing. Basically, what they do is they go out for bid throughout this whole state of Michigan. Berger has always had their contract since I've been here. So we know that we're getting a pretty solid price on it. We happen to be lucky that this truck is sitting on their lot right now. So We don't have to order it. We can take possession as soon as we can write the check. The purchase also includes upfitting equipment, toolboxes, lights, plow prep, and such. Typically, we would transfer these things over to a new truck, but the boxes that we are using now have already been used twice, and they're in pretty rough shape. So we want to go ahead and replace this stuff now. So the total purchase price is $42,944, which is significantly more than when I started working here. We used to spend a lot less money on trucks, but with everything else, prices increase, and this is what we deal with nowadays. So, any questions I might be able to answer?
Okay. We care to make the motion? Mr. White?
Mr. White
Supported
makes
by
the
Mr. Fike.
motion, supported by Fike. Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. Sears?
Jeff, does this have the same, is it white? Or are we going to end up with a,
It's the same style. Everything will be the same. It's a match.
okay, and then will we have Nick put a price on the value of the one that you're going to
Yes.
retire, so that from
Yep.
a bookkeeping standpoint, we can pay for that asset through the general fund back to the enterprise fund?
Absolutely. Yep. No problem.
Thank you.
Yep.
Item E, the board will consider a motion to readopt the property maintenance code by reference to ordinance 23-1. Mr. Laddie?
Well, this is our first ordinance of the year. Melissa and I were just talking about that, and we were trying to remember how to adopt an ordinance, because it's been a while. But this will be your first reading to adopt the property maintenance code by reference, meaning we've identified the code, it has been reviewed by the state of Michigan, and all of its provisions become ordinance provisions just by this particular ordinance. You may be asking yourself, why the 2015 edition? Well, the International Code Association creates these codes. It takes a long time for them to review and make changes. They also do the building code, the fire code, and they lag a bit behind. And then when they do offer their latest version, it gets sent to the state of Michigan, and then the Michigan administration reviews it and decides whether to adopt it or not. And so I have on my desk in my office a 2021 version of the property maintenance code, but that has not been adopted by the state of Michigan yet. So we're still operating under the 2015 edition. And one of the things I made sure that we did in this ordinance was I added a provision that says that if there are additional amendments or subsequent amendments to the property maintenance code, then they're adopted by reference as well. That also, and I had a conversation with Ted Shapansky the other day about the Michigan Building Code, and we follow the same process with the building code and with the residential code and with the fire code for the chief if he wants. Once you adopt the Michigan Building Code, you've essentially created an umbrella for all of those associated codes, including property maintenance. Because property maintenance is really the cornerstone of all our code enforcement, I want to make sure that that's as up to date as possible, because we actually do use this to enforce the codes, and there are penalties. The court will assess fines based on this code. The court has equitable jurisdiction to order people to do things, and when they won't, they give us the authority to go in and do it. And we have done that recently, and I think in the last 6 months, we probably had at least 2 properties where we have had to go in, hire folks to resolve the violations, and then we take those dollars or the costs and we put them on the tax roll of that property. So I wanted to make sure we had our bases covered. This is a little bit of extra insurance for us, and so if you're so inclined, if there's a motion to adopt, it will be by roll call vote. And then Melissa and I made a vow to remind each other that it has to come up again at our next meeting for the second reading. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions, Mr. White?
So if the state switches to the 2021 version, will that automatically be adopted by reference, or will we have to do a new one to then adopt the 21?
It will, but what I have in my mind, and I think, again, for property maintenance, will be covered. What I'd like to do is wait for the 2021 to come out on the building code and residential and maybe even the fire code if it comes out at the same time. And so you might see sometime in the next 12 months, the building code and residential code. And I don't think we'll need to readopt the property maintenance code, but we may throw it in there for good measure.
Okay. Mr. Kilmer?
Is this Boca that we're talking about here?
No, it's different than Boca. It's and I'm trying to remember the name of the agency, but it's the International Code Council. It's a national, even though it's international, for us, it's a national association that promulgates these code. And so if you look back in the minutes 10 or 15 years ago, you'd see a lot of Boca code things. But I guess the trend of the time is to switch over to the International Code Service. They function very similarly.
Okay, any
Is there-
other concerns or questions?
Is a motion in order,
Yes, it
Mr.?
is.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. Supported by Mr. White.
Supported by Mr.
Supported by Mr. Fike.
Fike. Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Future agenda items, we have next up at our meeting, our strategic plan item of branding is the topic. So we'll be talking a little about where we're at with that. Okay, board reports. Mr. White, anything with the Zoning Board of Appeals? Nope. Okay, Mr. Fike, anything Metro Alliance?
They earlier mentioned that micro, whatever that's called, resurfacing out here,
Okay,
just so everybody knows.
okay.
And,
Saginaw Street?
Saginaw from Hill to Maple and Hill from Dort to Saginaw.
Okay. I'm looking forward to the state doing Dort eventually.
Right, yeah.
That's probably worse than Saginaw Street. Okay, Mr. Kilmer, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Rick Robertson?
No, sir.
Okay. One thing with our cleanup that we had, I think we did an exceptional job with the people that volunteered. We had 20-some people, I think we mentioned before, but we had probably about 5 or 6 mountains of garbage that was picked up. I want to thank personally Dan Garman, our contact with Mterra, for going out and actually personally picking up a lot of it and putting it in his truck and consolidating it into a few piles, and then our Mterra trucks picked it up. But, and also our DPW helped with picking up some of the pallets and tires and things that can't go in the trash, so I wanted to thank everybody for that. We do have another group that wants to clean up on the 20th, and Melissa, are they meeting at Alga Credit Union? You know what time? 9 a.m. on Saturday the 20th at Alga parking lot, if anybody's interested in assisting. They're going to clean up the Hill Road area as well as part of Saginaw Street. So,
I've got a question on that.
yes.
I noticed there is a section that has kind of a lot of litter, but I didn't know whether we were allowed to get to it.
On Hill Road or Saginaw Street? Or where?
It is the approach from,
On 75
yes,
at Holly Road?
yes, right when you get onto the expressway. Are we allowed to do that, or is that their deal?
We're allowed, but the safety is the concern. You know, I saw that as well, Mr. Fike, and I'm thinking that I may go down there on a Sunday morning early or Saturday morning early when there's no traffic, and maybe we'll get a few people that would want to help do that. Just, Mr. White?
Have we reached out to the sheriff's department for work release and this type of stuff? Because they were doing that pre-COVID, and I don't know if
Right.
they've gone back to it.
No, at this point, they haven't, I'm being told, but we had somebody stop and ask if, or holler out their window and ask if we were parolees when we were cleaning it up.
Because we looked like we were-
Well, it was actually my wife in that group that they hollered that at, but I think they were kidding, I hope, but I think maybe we have a small group that if somebody, you know, we can ask our volunteers if some of them want to meet and we go down there and attack one of those. There's a few of the, where Mr. Fike is talking about is the approaches on 75 and the exits on 75. You know, and on those roundabouts, there's spaces in between, I mean, on Holly Road and 75, there's some narrow spaces between the two, but they seem to collect all the litter right there. So maybe we'll schedule a day with some
just
people
that.
to help us do that. And I am still planning, I'm putting together a proposal for the board to consider a committee to discuss our options when it comes to residential streets, residential transportation plan, whatever. But, the subdivision street issue isn't going away. And we have subdivisions that the cost is, $20,000, $25,000 per parcel. And we have some subdivisions that are just never going to pave their street, or repave it. And they're not going to get any better with us doing nothing. So if nothing else, I'd like to have a group of citizens, as well as, I've talked to the road commission, they're willing to participate, and a couple of people from our staff to participate in a committee that looks at all the options and maybe make some recommendations to our board as far as what our options are when it comes to subdivision streets and transportation. So hopefully I'll have that ready for consideration at the next board meeting. Mr. Limata or Mr. Laddie, anything?
I don't have anything to add.
I just have one item. We're going to be going into union negotiations with our AFSCME chapters, both W and B. Those unions represent our office clerical workers, finance workers, our DPW service technicians, our park maintenance technicians. We'll do that on June. I've got 2 days blocked out for to start those June 13th and 14th. So I'm going to ask the board to go into a closed session on your meeting of May 30th, just so that we can talk about negotiation strategy and the direction we'll be heading in with those negotiations. We also did move forward with getting a salary survey performed for those positions. We should have that information before we go into negotiations, which will be helpful just to see how we're doing with what we consider to be the comparable municipalities around us. So if you just think of that on your meeting of the 30th, I'd like to have a little bit of time in the closed session just so I can get direction from the board.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Limata?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Fike?
I've got a question. I don't know if this is for Jeff or not, about what happened at Elga.
With the sewer situation?
Yeah, was that our sewer that caused their new building to get backed up, or people were asking me about it, and I said, I don't know. What happened?
Short answer, yes, it was our sewer that backed up. We believe it was caused by the construction of the turn signals at that area. So we immediately acted, got brought bypass pumping in because we could not clean the sewer, it was full of sand. We hired Zito Construction to come out and excavate the sewer, is some 16 to 18 feet deep, and it was a total mess. So it's all fixed now. We completed it. We haven't received those bills yet, but as soon as I do, I'll report back to the board. But
So, Mr. Sears,
The
if I,
cause was the contractor who was doing the signal work had put piling a base down next to our sewer, which caused the collapse because our sewer pipe came up, caused the collapse of our sewer.
but it was marked, right? I mean,
it was marked, and they were within a foot of our sewer. Anytime you're within 2 feet of any utility, you're supposed to expose it. Probably because it was 16 to 18 feet deep, they weren't going to. The process they use is they drill a hole, and then they put a giant steel tube in, and then they vibrate it down. Whenever they vibrated it down, it displaced the pipe, and it basically took the pipe like this and brought it up like that. So, and it caused over 30 feet of sewer to be full of sand. So it was a considerable amount of work. We've already notified the road commission that we're going to be pursuing those damages from them and from the contractor. So we're on top of that. We've already filled out their incident report, sent them pictures, everything we have. So we'll aggressively be pursuing that.
Elga, I imagine that was the business primarily that was affected, I take it, or,
As far as I know, Elga is the only business that was affected.
and I take it they'll probably get compensated from the insurance for.
I haven't heard from them yet as far as what they're doing about that, but they
We're not-
could certainly pursue damages also from the contractor.
But we weren't liable in that situation. It was a contractor working for the road commission
Correct.
that was installing the lights, and they're continuing to install those. As you see, Long Hill Road, you can see they have the concrete base for more of them already poured, so.
And we will be going through and televising all the sewer around there that they're working around, just to be sure. So,
Thank you.
All right, very good.
Is a motion to adjourn in order, Mr. Supervisor?
It is.
Then I will make that motion.
And just remember, we're going to be meeting at 6 PM at our next meeting on the 30th.
We're adjourned at 8:26 PM.
All those in favor, say aye.
All right,
26 PM.
got to remember that.
We need to get